Welcome. I thought I'd just do a video as I edit this image in Lightroom and Photoshop. So this was a shot a few months ago in Indonesia, and we arrived at the scene. I had my graduated filters with me, and I'd never been to this lake. But I remember looking at the skyline and the sun was coming up over onto that left, and I knew my graduated filters would cause a problem in this image, so I kept them in the bag. So I went with kind of plan B, and as photographers, especially landscape photographers, it's always good to have plan A, B and C, because sometimes what we shoot is we just can't shoot it the way that we want to. So my graduated filter stayed in the bag, and I resorted into shooting two images. So you can see my histogram up top right here. This is straight out of camera, no edits. I definitely did not clip the highlights. So the highlights, the sky was shot correctly. I have no blown highlights in this, but I have a problem in the shadows because this scene, the dynamic range for my sensor was just too much for it. So I did shoot a second image straight away, and you can see now that the shadows from the skyline down has been exposed correctly. Just a little bit of clipping here. So I do have my clipping warning boxes on, so I can see blue is clipped in the shadows and red in the highlights. But you can see I could easily just open up maybe the blacks, and that would just get rid of that. So I know that from the skyline down, it's perfectly exposed, but I have an issue now in the skies. I've overexposed it and I've lost all color. So I did shoot, as I said, two images, and I could bring these into Photoshop and blend these by hand, but I'm not here to show you that technique because it's a bit more complicated. So let's go back and say that maybe you think, okay, I've got to take the shot, but what can I do with this image? So what we can do, we can actually doubly process this image, or double processed. This is a raw file, so it's a 16-bit file. So I've got a lot of latitude to pull out or increase the exposure and the shadow. So what I do is, once again, look at my sky, and as I said, this is straight out of camera. I'm happy. I don't want to add any more saturation to it. Even though this is a raw file and it's probably got a little bit more saturation in the sky that day, but I think this is enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to sharpen the sky because I don't sharpen my skies and I don't sharpen my water. So what I'm going to do is just right click, and I'm going to edit this in Photoshop, and you can edit straight into Adobe Photoshop or open as a smart object. Look, I usually open up in Smart Objects because if I need to edit the image in Camera Raw, I can do that. So we can see the images in Photoshop, and I'm just going to drop that down. And now I'm not worrying about the sky now because I'm going to edit for the shadows. So what we can do, now this is just playing around. It's increasing the exposure and obviously the shadows and the blacks. And that's, you just play around until you get what you like. Now just be careful because you can see the sky, it's very bright. Now the foreground should never be brighter than the sky. Water absorbs light, so the water should be maybe a half a stop darker than the sky. So it will just look weird if the foreground and the shadows are brighter than the sky. So when you're editing, you can come back to this image and just look at it and say, maybe I need to tone down the brightness and the shadows. Another thing is always good to correctly expose an image, because you can see the sky, there's virtually no noise in that sky. It's nice and clean. And also when I expose correctly for the foreground, there's no noise in this. But as I increase exposure, it will create some noise because I'm really pushing that data. So there is some good noise reducing software out today, and it does a great job. So let's go ahead and just play with this. Just go, maybe I need to just expose it just a little bit. Just come up and open the shadows up. Maybe the black's a tad. And I'm always remembering what was that sky like. So I'm looking down here, very similar. And maybe a little bit of contrast, just to bring that contrast back a bit. And I'm looking in here, so I've got good detail. I can see the clouds here. Once again, you just play with it. Maybe that'll do. Now I can come down. I'm not going to touch texture. I'm not going to do anything. Nothing. Maybe detail. I've got default sharpening on, but I might just put a little bit more. And I'm just going to hold the left Alt key on my keyboard and just use this masking. So what it will do is I hold the key down, the Alt key, and slide to the right. Whatever's black won't be sharpened. So as I said, I don't like my sky sharpened. So I just keep pulling. So anything that's white in the image is going to be sharpened. So I like my edges sharp. So you can see the edges of the boat, the mountains, the edge of the mountain. And there's a little bit of cloud up there. So I can just keep pulling that and let go. So that's good. And lens corrections are built in. So with the Fuji cameras, yeah, they just work all the time. Transform, note, calibration. I'm not going to touch anything. So what I'm going to do is now right click and edit in and open a smart object. So the same image, I've processed it twice. Okay, now I've got the foreground image in my layers, but I don't have my darks because we have to make a stack. So up the top here, you can see there's my sky and there's my shadow. So what we can do this is a plugin that you can purchase. You can come in here and just click stack and it will just stack automatically, but some people haven't got that. So what I do is, there's several ways you can do it. I just drag one. It doesn't have to be this one, it can be the other one. I just drag that out, make sure my move tool up here is on, hold my shift key down, left click and hold, and just drag that image on top of the other one. Let go, and now we can delete the one that we dragged over. Do I want to save it? No. And there it is. I've got both files in. Now I do like working from the dark on top. That's how my brain works. So one file, now we've got two files, one for the sky and one for the foreground. So what are we going to do? Okay, so I need to put a mask on this top layer. I need to reveal what's underneath. So on your layers tab, just right down here, it looks like a little camera. Now if I just click that, it's going to put a white mask on. Okay, so I'll just go Control Z. But if you hold the Alt key down, and while you hold the Alt key down, you can click on the mask, it automatically turns it into a black mask. So what that's doing, this black mask, imagine if this black mask was on top of this image, totally covering that sky, and it's just letting in the bottom layer. So what we can do is, I need to reveal this sky here. So as I just think of this as a scratchy card, if I start scratching away this black, it's going to reveal this layer here, the sky. So what we do, we have a tool in here called the gradient tool. I'm just going to turn this gradient tool, let's switch it over to white. You can hit the, I think it's the X key. Yeah, the X key. So make sure that's on white. And we're going to hit the gradient tool here. Okay, so hit your G key. If you can't see it, you can right click it, and then we've got the gradient tool, the bucket tool. But this is the tool we want, the gradient tool. And what I'm doing, I do have a stylus or a pen. And what I'm going to do, now this, you just got to play around with this because the first time might not be right. And so what you do is click somewhere and just drag down, you'll see a line. Now, if you wanted to keep it kind of vertical, because we do want this to be vertical, just hold the shift key down and it locks it into that vertical. Now, you can come out to 45 if you want, but we want it vertical here. So let's just drag down to about there, let go, and we can see we've allowed the sky to come through because it's white. White reveals, black conceals. But, you know, the tool hasn't made a great job. It's pretty, it's a bit high for me, so I'll come a bit lower and just drag down and come down, or I may want to come high and make it more feathered. So you just keep playing until you are happy. Okay. Whoop, doing too many keys, it's saying. Okay, so let's now I can just use the opacity slider too, just to maybe just back off a little bit. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now we have a problem because we can see this mountain here is darkened, as if I would have used a graduated filter in this image at the first place. I would have put that graduated filter down, because I would have to knock this highlight out here, and I would have pushed it down and down to about here, and I would have created this problem. I would have created a darkening in this hill here, which doesn't look natural because I've got correct luminosity here and none here. It doesn't look normal. Can we fix that? Yes, we can, because we do have the correct exposure down the bottom. So what have we got to do? Well, I could just use a black paintbrush of turning it to black, hitting your B key and just painting this back in, but it's going to bring in white back in the sky, and it's going to create like a halo around the edges, which you don't want. So what we can do, we can make a selection of this mountain, and when we paint, it'll only stay in the mountain. It won't go in the sky. So make sure your mask is selected. So if we click on that, you can see the little white lines on the corners. I want to make sure that your this layer here is selected. So what we want to do is come up to our tools and look for a quick select tool. And it's a W on your keyboard. And what we can do is just come in and just click inside the mountain, and it should find the edge because it's got a little bit of contrast, and it picks it up pretty well. So we just come down to about there, maybe, and we'll probably pick up the whole mountain actually, because it's got a really good, and we have. So we've picked up all that mountain because we can see darkness here. It may darken the edges along here, which we'll get rid of. So what have we got to do? I've got to use a black brush to paint on here to reveal what's underneath. So you see this here, all this black from here down is revealing the bottom image. So I've got to paint black up through here to reveal that bottom image. So on the mask, now B key, pick your brush, and look, your opacity up here, top left, is how much paint you want to paint through. So you can actually scrub this through to 100% to 1%, or you can use your keypads like number 1 through to 0. So 1 would be 10%. You know, obviously 7 would be 70, and 0 would be 100. So let's just go. Need to put that back to brush. Let's go 50%. We'll zoom in, and I'm using my pen, so black and the brush, and just paint. Now you can hold the space bar, and you can click on the image and move it around. And just come through here. You can see that cloud just whitened up a bit, which is really good. So I'm just painting over. And the more times I take the pen off and put it on, it's just adding that 50%, 50%. And as I said, I've got a pen and a tablet, so you can add pressure, more pressure, less pressure. I'm just going to come through here. We'll go 100%, and we'll come through here, and just lightening that up through there. So that's really good. Okay. All right, so we'll zoom out. Now we can get rid of this marching ants. Just click off that. So Control D gets rid of the marching ants. Okay, so now we can see we've got even illumination through this mountain. So if somebody looked at this, they would say, oh, wow, you know, he obviously didn't use a grad filter, but I did use the gradient tool and got rid of that darkness from that. So that is the blend done, and I would probably go in, I'd put this on another pixel layer and continue to work on that. Now, because I put these on smart objects, you can come in and work on these objects separately. So I just click on the bottom layer or the shadow layer, Camera Raw opens up, and now I can actually continue to edit. I can say, well, maybe I'll just bring up just a tad more lightness or exposure, and it just lightens that exposure. And I can do that for the sky. I can come up, is it locked? I can come up and maybe I want my highlights, just drop my highlights down a little bit more or bring them up. And you can come in here, if you don't like it, just come back in and change it. Okay, so that's how to doubly process one file. So hopefully that helps improve your photography. Thanks for watching.